All right. All right. A little more like that. All right. How James said that. A little more along the lines of the latter. This is Wednesday, of course. Whether you're tuning in now, later, that's up to you. But this is Wednesday, 5:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You've tuned into Discussions of Truth. I am your host, Ian Hamilton Trottier. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. Both of those handles, IANTROTTIER. And what do we have in store today? Always controversial, always topics that push the envelope. And I urge you to look at the article that I wrote a couple years ago that led up to the production of this program. Honeycolony.com is where that article was published, and it had to do with a pesticide that was sprayed over the local area here to Miami-Dade. I'm a Californian by birth, and I was astonished, really, at the lack of civilian contest towards the spray. It was a very small group that contested the spraying of this highly controversial toxic pesticide known as Nalid. Other trade names, Dibrom. That's another one. And it really didn't grab much national attention at all, apart from the fact that Zika is what grabbed all the national attention, the Zika virus. But this pesticide was not used in Broward, the county to the north, as they used something that was safe and organic. And the roundtable here is that this pesticide has been banned. Currently is, as far as I know, but was banned at the time in Europe. It was deemed not only toxic but neurotoxic, as it is proven to cause microcephaly, which is brain damage in a child, developing fetus, more exact. Yet it was sprayed here in Miami-Dade, clear as air can be in the day. So that's what led to the start of this program. As I made various, I urge you to read that article. You simply type in my name and Honey Colony; it'll come up. Zika, Miami Beach. Put in those keywords into your search bar. It's bound to come up, or find it on my website. The issue here is that the connections led right back to banking institutions such as the Federal Reserve, mainly via the Rockefeller Foundation and family. Read the article. It explains it. 5-time Emmy Award winner John Barber will be presenting his newest book. Your mother's not a virgin, in case you didn't know. But more importantly, more precisely, John will be talking about the Garrison tapes. And that is a documentary that he produced in '92, just before the lead-up, rather, to the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, starring Kevin Costner, which likely you've heard of or you've seen yourself. But Jim Garrison, who Barber goes into, was the Orleans Parish District Attorney. That's in Louisiana. And he pushed the fringes on the Warren Commission. Most Americans don't realize there were probably at least 3 or 4. I know definitely there were 3 various commission reports. Warren Commission was the first released, and that got the most backlash. But the latter reports actually talk about conspiracy theories. And yes, these are federal government reports. Anyway, so the Warren Commission, and I'm going to say starring the Dallas brothers. The Warren Commission is what Jim Garrison had an issue with, and John Barber, having won 5 Emmys, did some research on that. Yes, the JFK assassination, which is a recurring topic on this program. Why? Right. So why would I even Why would he even spend time looking into the assassination of John F. Kennedy? Why would I even do that? It's before my time, and what's the relevance today? Federal Reserve. That's the relevance. The Federal Reserve, because it's still since 1913, in the passing of the Federal Reserve Act under Woodrow Wilson, it basically has all of us in chains to some degree or another. I'm not knocking the U.S. Constitution in any way, and I'm not necessarily knocking the Federal Reserve, but I am questioning and asking you to question whether it is justified and whether it possibly is corrupt. And what I am saying is that through the various guests I've had on the program, even though none of them directly go after the Federal Reserve, I will say that it is a common thread. It is a common thread in that it has something to do with the JFK assassination, and it still exists, right? It still exists. Your money is basically it's not money, right? They're not even they're bills. They're not dollars. They are Federal Reserve notes. So what is that? So Curtis Kallenbach joined the program last week and talked about something, various things, but he did allude to the zygote and the straw man, and basically what you are and who you are, your Social Security number if you're an American, who you are in regards to the government. So what are those? What are those strings that pull the government, and are there strings that pull the government? Is this hashtag, this common phrase that's used here and there, the deep state? Is that a common? Is that a problem? Is that an issue? Is that does it infringe? Is it real? And if it's real, does it infringe on your rights as an American? What is the New World Order? Well, what is that, right? Just because you may not have had a catastrophe, if you will, in your local community or in your life or your family or your state, that doesn't mean that a catastrophe like a weather storm, a weather manipulated or a chemically manipulated storm, a hurricane could blow in and destroy your state, your town. Okay. Should you be questioning these things? Absolutely, absolutely. Do the background research on it. They're not just conspiracy theories. They're real elements of life. Just like the Zika virus is a real virus, but is it a threat? Is it the threat that the CDC conveys it to be? Does the CDC even understand that it's a mundane, benign threat? In regards to my research, it's not. The pesticide was much more of a threat. From my research, the pesticide was more of a threat than that Zika virus. James Tracy, PhD from Iowa, is a former tenured professor. And by the way, John Barber, to finish that, John Barber will be joining next week. And if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, he was scheduled for this week. We have pushed him back as we'll be making room for today's topic of discussion. And I'll get into that. But let me continue with James. He's a former tenured professor of communications at Florida Atlantic University. He's local here to the state of Florida. He was dismissed from the school in 2006 for his views on conspiracy theories and false flags. So what was it that got James into hot water and dismissed from FIU? Well, he took an opposing view. Right? This whole program is based on questioning authority. That's what. Take your local, your state, your federal, take your authority to task. It's taking them to task. Okay? That's what keeps any civilization just and free. Is if the little people like me and presumably like you push the right buttons and question authority where it should be questioned. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay. So anyway, James questioned authority, didn't he? So he questioned authority on topics that were viewed as very fringe, and we'll have him on the program in a couple of weeks, May 22nd. But he'll talk about, hey, were any of his rights taken away? Was he labeled a terrorist? The grounds were His grounds of dismissal were conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Okay, 2018, Tracy filed an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals in the 11th Circuit with his civil rights attorney. Okay, he said, for instance, that Sandy Hook was a false flag. It was set up. The Sandy Hook massacre was a staged event. He also questioned the Boston Marathon bombings as being a staged event. Now, what's wrong with that? I'm asking you, what is wrong with that? Is terrorism real? Sure it is. Are people violent? Violent? Sure they are. Are people dying every day because of it? Because of religion? Yes, absolutely they are. They have throughout the course of humanity. That's how disgusting our race is, right? Can't solve things diplomatically and over a discussion. They have to raise up arms. Okay, again, he was dismissed for his view that there could be moles in the U.S. government and the CIA that went to stage these attacks with the end result of taking away some of your rights. Gun rights. Are you a gun rights advocate? Do you believe in the freedom to arm yourself? Okay, I'm just asking you. Author of 20 books, public speaker, based in the Isle of Wight. That's WIGH2, if you're not familiar, in England. David Icke. He's lectured in over 25 countries and is known to lecture for up to 10 hours straight. He's a former BBC employee. Icke is considered a global leader in addressing a movement known as New Age Conspiracism. May 28th, David will join the program. I like to set the stage, lay the foundation. Why I do what I do, and I dig out guests to join the program to inform you. Why do I do that? If it hasn't rung a bell yet, and I think I've laid it out for you, because you need to question authority. The world is changing dramatically. And if you enjoy the fruits of what the United States is built upon, its Constitution, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, if you enjoy those things as much as I do, make sure that they stay intact, because don't think for a second they could be taken away from you. And furthermore, don't think that there are not groups. Don't think that there are not powerful, financially wealthy groups that want to take those rights away from you, because they are actively trying to do so. That's why I do what I do day in or week in, week out. Oxford University lecturer Dr. Young-Hae Chi claims in his new book, Alien Visitations and the End of Humanity, that an extraterrestrial species is currently inhabiting the planet and actively crossbreeding in an attempt to create a hybrid species worthy of, got this one, counteracting the coming destruction and alteration of climate change. Yes, he's Korean. And yes, he lectures at Oxford University. Would you put Oxford on par with the Harvard? Maybe you should put Oxford a little higher than Harvard as far as their academia. So somebody of that level, we're not talking about some high school kid. Not talking about some community college professor or high school teacher or student or whatever. We're talking about an Oxford University lecturer, okay, saying that this planet, which is planet Earth, is currently inhabited by extraterrestrial beings. Species, rather. Okay. And the program has hosted other guests, Carrie Cassidy, for instance, that have pushed that narrative, that have completely pushed that narrative. Okay? And if you're religious, regardless of your religion, but if you're a religion, if you're a practicing member of any type of Christian faith, to think that there are not or could not be extraterrestrial influences on this planet. Paul Hellyer joined the program last month. Was it last month? 6 weeks ago, about 7 weeks. Paul Hellyer is a former deputy prime minister. Deputy prime minister. It's basically the VP of Canada at one point in time in his career. Very high-ranking Canadian, very high-ranking Canadian politician. Extremely high-ranking politician. And he said it on this program, on Windward Radio here. Discussion of Truth, Windward Radio. He said it to me. There are extraterrestrials on this planet. Getting into June, we will have author, journalist, and talk show host Alexis Brooks, and she will be going into metaphysics, spirituality, and New Thought concepts. She's based in New England, and she's got a very interesting program in that she looks into, again, some of this. What is reality? What is your reality? Is it the same reality as your neighbor's reality? And how do you perceive that reality? Does it get adjusted? On her program, she's hosted Sonia Choquette, New York Times bestselling author. I don't know if I pronounced that last name right or not. Former CBS News anchor. You've heard of this one, Diana Rather. And Sean Stone, Oliver Stone's son. Have all joined Alexis. She'll be joining this program here June 19th. So that should set the stage there for our next topic of discussion. We are essentially rolling out on the first Wednesday of the month. I host this program every Wednesday, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Wednesday, except when I'm on vacation or traveling. But every Wednesday, you can tune right here on Windward Radio and find me at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard. And the first Wednesday of the month, what is basically being rolled out is the Linstroth Report. Okay? We're all volunteers here, okay? We're volunteer, self-producing, volunteering for one purpose, and that is to help educate and inform you. Why? Again, at the nexus of, hey, there was a toxic pesticide sprayed over me. I remember the crop duster flying right over my head at 5 a.m., spraying that nailed. A banned substance in Europe, yet it got sprayed over Miami-Dade and Windward. So JP volunteers. We're all volunteering our time here. Okay? Donate to the program, impeachmassmedia.com. Help us fund this thing. Keep this thing going. We've had some incredible guests. And again, we do this for liberty and justice, for freedom and education for you. JP will be joining the program here momentarily and delivering, again, what is becoming the Linstroth Report. Okay, JP's no lightweight, and we're going to go back into Oxford University. He holds a PhD from Oxford University. And he's based here locally in Florida. He's a professor at a couple different schools here. One of them is Barry. He writes for Peace Voice and some other great publications. But his current piece was put out through the Londonderry Sentinel. That's Londonderry, Derry Sentinel. Fear and loathing for the so-called new IRA. I mentioned a website name for you. I just mentioned it. Donate to the program through impeachmassmedia.com. Impeachmassmedia.com, stopmassmedia.com, same funnel. Different websites, same funnel. They funnel right back to this program, Discussion of Truth. Donate 10, 50,000, 10,000, 100,000, million. Donate whatever you would like to the program through either one of those websites. Impeachmassmedia.com. Journalism, as you know, the freedom to press, Right? Is that one of the cornerstones that made this country great, the United States of America? Freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom to write and investigate whatever you like and whatever you care to. So that's infringed upon in, can I go out there and say 80% of the world? Correct me if I'm wrong. But China, you certainly can't do that. North Korea, you certainly can't do that. Russia, certainly, you're going to be censored. Censorship is becoming a major issue in the United States. I personally have a problem with it. And you, if you're listening to my words, you should too. Lyra McKee, LGBTQ journalist based in Northern Ireland, was reporting on what is called a terrorist attack by the now new IRA outside of Belfast and Derry, in Londonderry. Derry, Londonderry, interchangeable. She was murdered. She was killed. Brandishing no weapon, not armed, she was taken out. Shot, killed, just like your beloved JFK. Or just like the beloved JFK. Maybe he's not your beloved JFK. She's done. She's gone. She's died. She was murdered. For what? For what reason? Why? I'll be right back with JP Linstroth, and we'll discuss this very topic. You are tuned in to Discussion of Truth with your host, Ian Hamilton Trottier. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. This is Winwood Radio.
And I have both.
You do?
Is it time for a plug? I have both at my shop. Spirit
Indeed.
and Beyond.
So come down to Spirit and Beyond and get your medicinal herbs. There's a lot that we're attracted to. I mean, the one thing we have to always remember is that as humans, we are still mammal. We're still animal. We're still attracted to herbal things. I mean, we've kind of been conditioned to think that things from the earth and things in their natural state aren't good. We become too sophisticated and we don't have time for that. And we need to make the time for it because it's our life. You know, it's cleaning our blood. It's giving us oxygen. It's, making us more attractive. I mean, say something like rosemary. I
love rosemary.
Rosemary is amazing. And I dare you to go into your bathroom cabinet and find any beauty product that doesn't say it has rosemary in it. Rosemary shampoo, rosemary toothpaste, rosemary lotion. The reason now, how much actual rosemary you're getting, you don't have to pay anybody to get some rosemary.
It's a bush. It grows like such a bush.
It grows like crazy. Yeah. You can go to the supermarket. If you bought organic rosemary, you probably can put it in water and continue to grow it. But say goodbye to the world you live in. You always been taking and now you're giving. Running on a way out. You will pay life without the Little Metallica. Why? Because music resonates, I think, and Metallica fires me up. We have with us for the official debut of the Linstroth Report.
I can't hear you, Ian. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine, JP.
Sorry.
Okay. You cannot hear me? Okay, connection problem here. Let's see. JP, are you there? Can you hear me?
Okay. Keep coming in and out, Ian.
Keep cutting in and out. All right. Let's see.
Yes, sir. You keep coming in and out.
Okay. Is that any better? No, we've lost him. All right, let's see here. Try this. I'm going to try this. Here we go. Calling back here. Skype audio. Typically works great in studio. Let's see. JP.
JP. Yes, sir.
Okay, how that I think that's better. Let's go from there. Can you hear? You can hear me.
Okay, great. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yep.
So, JP, clarification: you are you're a professor. You teach classes at Barry University and also Florida Atlantic. Is it?
Well, I've been affiliated with Florida Atlantic University in the past. I was a research affiliate with them, and I've taught anthropology classes with them, and I've taught anthropology at Palm Beach State College and Lynn University and Nova Southeastern University as well. In the past.
All right. So, and listeners can find your work at Explain. Typically, it's a Peace Voice is one of them.
Typically, Peace Voice is one of them, and then another one is Counterpunch, and then another one is I'm on academia.edu where I have an academic webpage.
And you're a former Fulbright scholar to Oxford.
Yes, I was a Fulbright scholar. I had a Fulbright scholarship to go to Brazil and do research there as well. And I've had other grants. Okay,
excellent. JP, what's interesting is that a former guest on the program and former employee of BBC, and he left the BBC because he found that there was way too much censorship. They weren't reporting clean-cut material information. Tony Gosling, earlier in the week, he had sent me some info on the topic that we're going to go into, and that is Lyra McKee. Okay. And then, interestingly enough, as you and I have discussed about bringing you on at the start of the month, every month, and creating what has become now the Linstroth Report, you had thrown my way this same topic, Lyra McKee. So that's what we're going to be discussing today.
Yes.
And for just a little nugget for listeners out there to understand what's at stake here, and literally what's at stake here is freedom of press, and that came out of my mouth. That's my view. But JP, let's get into it here. Let's get into the article that you wrote and was Fear and Loathing for the so-called new IRA, and that was published through the Londonderry Sentinel, and that's where her life was taken. It was right there in Londonderry in outside of Belfast.
Right. Also known as Derry. Right. I guess the Unionists call it Londonderry, and then the Republicans call it
Derry.
Derry.
Yeah.
But you're right. And again, thank you, Ian, for having me back and doing this Linstroth Report once a month. I appreciate it. You're right. I mean, Lyra McKee was a young Irish journalist from a Catholic background, but she had her family had her funeral, interestingly enough, in a Protestant cathedral in Belfast, which was to make sure that there was an invitation to the whole community.
Okay.
But the article that I wrote, Ian, and it got picked up by the Londonderry Sentinel, which is the newspaper where the murder took place.
Yeah.
The article was a call for peace and also to uphold the Good Friday Agreement or the Stormont Agreement, which was signed in 1998.
Okay. Right. That's right. April. Got my. It was signed in April, I believe, right around this time. 1998 is correct. That's from my knowledge.
Right. That's why it's called the Good Friday Agreement, because it's around Easter, and Easter has a significance for Republicans or those who had supported the IRA just because of the Easter Rising in 1916 and so on, as you know.
Yeah, and for listeners to get, we're not talking about U.S. Republicans. This is a political party in Ireland that goes back centuries, really, but more precisely to the First World War. While Britain was busy intertwangling themselves in that initial First World War, there was a group that broke. I'm assuming it's in Dublin, but it was concentrated there in Southern Ireland to separate themselves from Great Britain.
Correct. Like the initially Sinn Féin, which became the political arm of the IRA, in 1918 had the majority of votes in the country. Really, they were vying for independence from Great Britain. So it's a long, convoluted history, really, Ian, because, I mean, it ties into Irish nationalism. Sure. And then the 6 counties that didn't vote, really, for Sinn Féin were in the north, which became, or was known as Ulster, which is mostly Protestant-dominated, and then you have the Catholic Irish minority there, which is the root of the Troubles and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think a little more history there for listeners. Most of this present day struggle roots back to the 17th century, where there were farmers, Scottish and British farmers that had migrated into Northern Ireland, and they were Protestant in nature, and they clashed with the Catholic power at the time, and that's kind of where the foundation for all of this kind of started. It were the potato farmers, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was Oliver Cromwell and his army. Ironically, the revolutionary leader Oliver Cromwell, who was the leader of one of the leaders of the one side of the English Civil War, that was vying for parliamentary power over monarchical power, right? Over royalty. Sure. So that's where our parliament, our Congress derives our legislative power and our ideas of government a lot from the British in the 17th century, right? So you know.
Yeah, I mean, all roads lead to Rome, and as Americans, I don't think we truly identify with how fortunate we are to have the liberties that we do. Even though there's the main reason I do what I do is to help maintain those liberties and say, hey, there's corruption, and this stuff's got to get out because the country is falling and will fall if enough people don't come together and fight this corruption. Not to say it's falling, but it will fall. I mean, it will fall. But certainly all roads do lead to Rome, and when you're in the UK, which I was recently, you get a better sense for how struggles and how those people live. Those people have a they're brought up, and they have a 100-year forecast in mind. That's I mean, in that sense, I don't know if that makes sense, but in that regard, that's how these people operate and communicate with one another and work. They think centuries down the road. They're not thinking oh, in 5 years I want to get this law passed locally, or I want to have this in Miami or in San Francisco. I want this law passed, and we can create this type of city. It's not this. The United States is very new. It's a very new power, and not taking from any of its power, but something like the British Empire, or even Spain, the Spanish Empire. These are the Spanish Empire doesn't exist anymore in a military way, anyway. But these are powers that are ancient in the regard, and certainly in regards to the American power. I mean, not ancient.
Right. European wars go way back, and obviously there's a strong sense of history and tradition in England as well as Spain. I mean, ironically, you just mentioned Spain and the Spanish Empire. Well, it was the United States in the War of 1898, or the Spanish-American War, that ended the Spanish Empire. Our own first war, kind of our debut onto the world scene as a world power in 1898. But anyway, going back to the British, it was and talking about the British Empire, Ian, if you think of it that way as like the British Empire, you can think of Ireland as being Britain's first colony in a way. Because, Ireland was colonized, and it was colonized by English and Protestant and Scottish Protestant settlers, and taking away a lot of the wealthy estates, the wealthy Catholic estates, I should say, Catholic lands and so on. And so it still has resonance today, obviously. But the good thing in all this is that the Good Friday Agreement has been in place for 21 years. And unfortunately, on Easter Thursday, because the Northern Irish Police did a raid on the Cregan estates, looking for weapons and bombs, basically to prevent any terrorist acts over the Easter weekend, because the Easter anniversary, Easter Rising, is important for Irish Republicans, or the IRA, and now it's the so-called new IRA. As a result of that, they had began protesting and lighting cars on fire with Molotov cocktails, and then as a result of that, some of these new IRA members were firing live rounds toward the police, which there was also a crowd gathered around. And unfortunately, this young female journalist, this young female Irish journalist, Lyra McKee, was shot in the crossfire in this. And the new IRA came out with an apology, but from what I wrote in my article, it seemed beside the point, because their intent was malicious toward the police anyway. And so I guess one of the good things that's come out of this, Ian, is that the Sinn Féin, which was the political arm of the IRA, which is now a recognized political party, and the DUP, the Democratic Ulster Party, have agreed to have talks next week regarding upholding the Good Friday Agreement, which kind of fell apart in 2017. But one of the Sinn Féin spokespeople said that if the talks do fall apart next week, then they should then the Irish government and the British government need to get involved again, Ian.
Okay, so that's interesting, and that's obviously going to add another degree of heat to a brimming fire that seems to be stoked and currently burning. But this is an interesting concept to look at, really, what's going on here with this new IRA, because at that funeral was the Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill and Mary Lou MacDonald and the DUP's Arian Foster. So in Irish terms anyway, you're looking at political enemies.
Yes.
That have basically come together and literally sitting side by side. And you can look at the article by the Intercept, written by Robert McKay. And these are political enemies that are sitting next to each other. And basically the theme is, hey, there's conventional again opponents are coming together and saying, hey, the Lyra McKee death isn't so coincidental. It seems that she was taken out on purpose. It was known that she was there. She was taken out because she was reporting on it. Okay, let's get past all of this, and let's come together and at least unite under a common understanding that reporting and research and journalism should be free. That's how I read that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, JP?
See, I don't know. I mean, okay, I don't have contacts with the IRA, Ian. I don't have contacts with Sinn Féin. I mean, I have good friends who are Irish, who mostly are Southern Irish. I have one friend from Belfast, but like for me to say that she was specifically targeted, she may have been. I thought, from my understanding, was that they were targeting the police. Maybe she was, Ian. I mean, she was at the wrong place at the wrong time. But like as this priest said during her funeral, why does it take the death of this young woman who had her whole life ahead of her to have these talks again? You know, like why does it take a death of this, you know, innocent bystander, basically, Ian? You know, okay. And yes, so, you know, one of the worries that I have about writing the article that got published in the Londonderry Sentinel is that that's a unionist paper. I don't want to like be perceived as being biased in this conflict as being on one side or the other, because really a third party. I mean, my whole goal is for peace, and I'm a former senior researcher at the Peace Research Institute in Oslo, Norway. It's called PRIO. I've worked with, you know, in the Basque peace process a little bit, you know. I've written about the Basques, at least a minority of Basques have had traditional ties to the IRA. So I've published on some of that stuff, Ian, too. So that's interesting. That's a whole other topic. But I mean, this is why I know a little bit about this conflict. And what I do know is that, I mean, Sinn Féin has come out and has been against the killing in general, and so is the DUP. And here, like you were saying, these were enemies in the past. This is with we look at the Troubles, which began in the 1960s and lasted almost 30 years, Ian. You know, you have in Derry, where she was killed in Derry, also during Easter, Bloody Sunday.
Bloody Sunday, right.
And, you know, in 1972, where you had the British military firing at Irish Catholics who were peacefully protesting against political internment, right? Yeah, yeah. And 13 of them dying. Right. So that was, in a lot of ways, that set off the Troubles in a lot of ways, and just went downhill from there. Then, of course, in the 1980s, which I didn't write about in my article, you have the hunger strikes, the IRA hunger strikes in the prisons there. Bobby Sands was the famous one. And so, but what's also exacerbated the thing, which we talked about this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I guess, which was Brexit, right? Brexit has irritated both sides in the sense that the fear that the border's coming back and that police checks are coming back, and all those things have made a lot of people very uneasy. And I should say that, also should say this, and this is really important for anybody that listens to this, that this is extremely sensitive topic. And my article was about peace building, and so on. But I realize the issues are very sensitive, because one of the other things that I talked about in the article is at the same time what's going on is that some of the military and some of the Northern Irish police are being investigated and are on trial in some cases for those shootings on Bloody Sunday, Ian. And that's what's going on now.
And you're talking about 1972 Bloody Sunday.
Yeah. This is all these years later. These trials are happening now. And this is very sensitive for the victims' families, right? Very sensitive for, well, I mean, everybody, you know, involved in the Troubles. And one of the things that I brought up in my article is that, okay, so there were hardliners that did not agree to, you know, the Good Friday Agreement, the peace agreement at Stormont, right? Okay, but there are a lot of these younger, the new RA are a lot of these younger, disaffected, unemployed kids, basically, that were born after 1998 that knew nothing about the Troubles beforehand and have kind of been brought up in the sectarian environment. and places like the Cregan Estate, which is also very Republican, as far as I understand, area of Derry, which I don't, it's again, these are very sensitive issues.
Is it slummy, JP? I'm sorry to use that terminology, but is that would that describe it?
It's an estate, so I mean a lot of the I would describe it as working class, right?
Okay, yeah.
And
it's presumed, and I've tried to look at videos, and I haven't seen. I've seen there's footage that supposedly captures Lyra. It looks like just before she was murdered, but I haven't actually seen the murder. So it's hard to say from what I've been able to see, and that's again relying on any videos that may have recorded. It's hard for me to say, okay, was she targeted? And one of the suspects is a teenager and would fit the profile that you're mentioning, somebody that has no idea of the political past. Maybe just some kid that's out there to cause problems and is jumping into a gang, really, a terrorist gang. But there's not to segue from where you're going, but it's hard to see from any video that's of course provided to our access that shows that she was pinpointed. So if there was a spray of bullets, was it just she was randomly caught, and the two bystanders next to her were also mowed down or caught or shot, or was she pinpointed? Was she taken out on purpose? It's hard to say.
I mean, the videos that I saw, Ian, were masked guys carrying weapons or boxes of weapons, and some guy brandishing like a pistol, a firearm. Who was masked as well. They've made a couple arrests. I guess they made an arrest of a 57-year-old woman. One of the things I should say too is that, I guess for your listeners, is that the people want to, almost 3,500 lives were lost during this almost 30-year period during the Troubles, right, 1960s to 1998. Wanted to point that out just so people know, like. And this is, on all sides, and it's been, and like I said, it's very sensitive. It's still a very sensitive topic today. And I'll just give you an example, like just in comparing the Basque Country and their conflict too, people don't want to talk about it, right? It's a taboo subject. So, I always, when I came out and wrote this article, I'm wondering, how is it received? Will I be perceived as having a bias? Or something? But
JP, did you know it was going to be picked up by Londonderry Sentinel?
Well, I wrote some of the Northern Irish newspapers and asked, like, are you interested, and so on, and that one said yes, so they agreed ahead of time, yeah.
Okay,
but I mean, one of the I guess an Irish American newspaper has shown some interest as well, and it got picked up today by Los Angeles Progressive or LA Progressive, which is a interesting online paper, kind of like Counterpunch. Counterpunch hasn't picked it up yet, but Peace Voice, I think it's going to be posting it tonight. So, I mean, there are two versions of the article that are out now. I guess one's on the Londonderry Sentinel, and the other one is going to be published tonight on Peace Voice, and also it's already on LA Progressive. But anyway, I just want to make sure that the listeners know that, and that people are aware that I know these are very sensitive issues. I mean, one of my friends at Oxford, Ian, wrote the biography, I think, on Michael Collins. And Michael Collins was one of the leading revolutionaries in the Irish Republican movement at the turn of the 20th century, and was eventually assassinated because of kind of De Valera's betrayal of him. And, they made a movie about Michael Collins, which starred, who's that famous Irish actor? can't remember. I'm having a moment. Anyway, I'll think of it later. But anyway, that they made a movie out of it as well, and so it's in the United States, people in popular culture, like people know the conflict, I guess, through Patriot games. I don't know if you recall that film, Ian.
Vaguely, yes.
Okay.
I want to say Harrison Ford, but I think I'm mistaken.
Harrison Ford's correct.
Okay.
I was just trying to think of
the Irish actor.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the novelist actually, which the same guy who did Hunt for Red October and the Jack Ryan series, Tom Clancy, right?
Clancy. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so people know about this conflict through that movie, for example. And then the Michael Collins movie, I mean, this came out a while ago, I guess. And the movie, I think it had pretty good reviews. I mean, main actor Liam Neeson, of course. Liam Neeson.
Okay, I didn't realize he was Irish.
1996 came out. That was while ago, right? But anyway, this conflict, I mean, I just was trying to like relate to what maybe Americans know about it.
Right.
But obviously, like since the very beginning of it, Ian, Americans have provided monetary support to the Irish cause, the IRA, and things like that. And I guess why I brought that up was that to emphasize that America has always kind of been lopsided in the conflict of how we supported the IRA and things like that as well. But not that there's been atrocities against the Republicans in Northern Ireland at all. But I mean, there's victims on both sides. And I just remember my Irish friends when I was at Oxford, how happy everybody was that finally the conflict had ended and we can move beyond it. And I guess the whole thing with Lyra McKee was that, oh my goodness, are we back to something new?
Right.
Yeah, and I guess that's the whole thing is like these zombies from the past, these ghosts from the past. Like nobody needs to revisit these things. And I guess one of the things that I don't know, you probably know that I write about too is memory and trauma, and how people are traumatized in conflict. And of course, if there's living memory of conflict, how that has an effect, right, on its continuation.
Sure. Yeah, and I think JP, maybe you can expand on this, but I think the biggest point to be taking away from this death of this young thinker is that here we have and it's difficult for Americans to relate, I believe, because here we have a centuries-old conflict over religion. Basically, that's the again that term, all roads lead to Rome. And it's Catholicism versus Protestantism, and that's again in 2019 resurfacing its disgusting head. Is that at the basis of all of this? Whether she was deliberately killed or not, at the basis of all of this is the fact that there was violence in that street, in that neighborhood, in that estate that night. Yeah. It's violence that's rekindling, right. and at the base of all of that is difference in religion, which to me right. is absolutely disgusting.
Well, the funny thing is, and this is from an anthropological point of view, is that the irony, and of course, is that the people in the sectarian divide in Northern Ireland, culturally, whether they're Protestant or Catholic, have more in similarity than other people in other southern counties in Ireland, right?
Interesting.
Because they culturally share
that's right.
this space, right?
That's a good point, JP.
It's interesting, Ian, too, because like when you look at conflicts like this, and you can look at Rwanda as well, like the Hutsis and the Tutsis, they're related people, but you create these divides. And one of the things I write about too, Ian, is cognitively we do this. And one of the Robert Sapolsky, who's at Stanford University, one of the interesting things that we know about the brain now, we know more about the brain in the last 30 years than we ever have. But one of the chemicals that gets triggered in the brain, whether we're talking about race or racism or religious differences, is oxytocin. What oxytocin does is that it makes people within the group want to be part of that group more, but it also enhances rejection of outgroups, right? So, I mean, it can happen in seconds, Ian. Like, you can look at somebody, let's say you're a Yankees fan, right?
Sure.
And you can look at somebody with a Boston Red Sox cap and immediately think, oh, they're
an enemy.
They're the enemy, right? They're the other.
Right.
And it can happen that fast, right? So,
and I laugh about it, but there was yet another incident at Dodger Stadium of a guy.
Right.
I think he lost his life. There was a fight over these opposing fans of teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's horrendous. Yeah.
It is horrendous. So there's a biological component aside from the sociocultural one, right? But literally, if you go into these neighborhoods in Northern Ireland, at least in the past, it became better in the last 21 years, right? But there were walls, there were murals set up, there was visual elements of differences. Then you have the parades. You have the Easter parades for the Republicans, and then you have the parade season in the summer for the Protestants and the Loyalists, right? The orange marches, and all this kind of militancy. If you look at it, how it divides society, it also creates the conflict, right? You're marching in this kind of military way because you're defending some kind of idealized history or whatever. That idealized history never exists. I mean, it exists in your mind.
You're right.
But it's the past, right? But you reify it and you commemorate it every year. And one of the things that I studied too was a parade in the Basque Country and how it's reified. And what I looked at is a conflict over a group of feminists who wanted equal rights as men to march in the parade. But one of the guys that wrote about the kind of parades in Northern Ireland is a pretty well-known anthropologist named Neil Jarman, and you're cognitively you physically, like, your body, like you reify these, you go through these emotions of militancy, and then you truly believe it, and you keep reenacting these things year to year to year, and it becomes part of your identity.
Habitual, yeah.
Right? Your militancy becomes part of your identity. And that's what, hopefully, one of the good things, well, it did for the last 21 years with the Good Friday Agreement, that those peace accords played down that militancy. Even though, I mean, you still have, conflicts time to time with these orange marches in the summer, and to some degree also with the Easter marches of the Republicans. But, the peace accords in 1998 at Stormont at the the Parliament there in Northern Ireland, played down the militancy and calmed it down, and then people thought that violence was in the past, and so what the McKee killing did was reify all these old ghosts,
Right.
So
right. JP, in winding down here. What do you most want your readers and listeners to take away from this particular I'll call it a situation regarding Lyra McKee?
I just hope that people will, number one, realize this is a very sensitive conflict, obviously, with victims on both sides, whether the Ulster Unionist or whether they're Republican Catholics. But this is a very, very old conflict going back, as we talked about, to the 17th century, also being reified at the turn of the 20th century with the independence movement for Ireland's independence from Great Britain, and then, of course, the 30 years of the Troubles. But what I want people to realize is that it's a very, very complicated conflict with a long history, and 3,500 people died in this conflict. And I think what we all hope, you know, and if you're religious, you pray that there's more peace, right? That you want there to be the peace process to continue. You don't want the talks between the Sinn Féin and the DUP or the Republican side and Unionist side to fail. You want those peace talks to succeed, and those politicians to uphold what they agreed upon. You know, in 1998, 21 years ago, and any Americans that read my op-ed, which is, you know, opinion editorial, is just that it's only scratching the surface of understanding this conflict. It's very complex, very sensitive. But you know, what we're finding too in the world is that there's, you know, you have these terrorism killings all over for different reasons, and you know, whether we're talking about the synagogue now in California, or the killing over Easter in Sri Lanka. You know, that we need to find avenues toward peace. We need to find avenues toward peace building, and I think that that's the takeaway that I would say.
Excellent. And just one last thing for how do you recommend a listener or reader? How do you recommend them acting? What can they do to make a difference?
You know, ex-senator, U.S. Senator Mitchell was instrumental in the Northern Irish peace process, and we have such a strong support for Ireland in this country that, I mean, I think that what they could do is write their U.S. senators and write their U.S. congressmen and urge the Congress to help the parties maintain the peace. You know, this is, you know, way back when under Bill Clinton's administration, but, you know, Great Britain and the Irish governments can still use the help of the U.S. as well. And
right.
no reason why that U.S. senators or U.S. congressmen can't also help in the peace process to make sure that all the political parties are upholding the Stormont Agreement.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, the Linstroth Report by Dr. J.P. Linstroth. J.P., thank you for joining Discussion to Truth and Winwood Radio.
Thank you so much, Ian. I really appreciate you having me on, and I really appreciate the discussion as always, and it's wonderful to speak with you, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, J.P. Linstroth.
Thank you so much.
So, as you can tell, you've got a major issue at hand. And again, I think from my viewpoint, and this is really what drives me to do what I do, is that it's easy to become that cog in the wheel. It's easy to do 9 to 5 and hey, some young woman at 29 years old just got her head blown off. It's easy to say, who cares? Oh, it's not me. Who cares? What makes her different? She stood up for being gay. And she stood up in her own Catholic family to protest. And I think that's why there's communities around the world, certainly Western world, that are grieving the loss of this young woman and unfortunately questioning that she was a target. I personally, again, and as you heard JP and I talk, I would personally walk away and say, okay, she was targeted because that new IRA member terrorist knew who she was. She was a target. Whether she was or she wasn't, that conflict shouldn't have been happening. Wherever you are on the planet, and certainly if you're in the United States, uphold your constitutional rights for freedom of religion, freedom of peace, freedom of speech. What you have in the United States is a political melee of these two sides fighting, pointing fingers at each other. Get past the bureaucracy. So many of these politicians are bought out by large corporations, super PACs. It's absolutely disgusting to me. And I don't feel that the United States has even had a legitimate president since John F. Kennedy, a man that was beloved of all Americans, regardless of political affiliation. And that's really what a president should be. So as we strive day to day to do our best, and again, getting back to my point, is that you can make a difference. Make a difference. Like JP said, write to your congressperson, write to your senator. Make a difference. That next person that loses their life, regardless of what reason, but if it's politically associated, that might hit home for you. This has been the weekly edition of Discussion to Truth on Winwood Radio. I'm the host. Here am I, Ian Hamilton Trottier. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, IENTROTTIER. Donate to the program. And until next week, with John Barber, 5-time Emmy Award winner, be awesome. Moment of silence for Lyra.